do use a lot of, on your pedal board, I've seen it, you use a lot of old pedal
stuff.
None of the stuff is made anymore.
No, it really, every month something gets quit making where it's, it's not.
Do you hunt around and find extra ones that...
Sometimes, yeah. The tube thing is interesting. It's like for example, the tube overdrive I use, it works great on a certain tube, but they don't make that tube anymore.
Right.
So it's really tough to keep that sound the same. And the tubes that I used to love to use in my Marshall amps, they don't make those anymore. So it's like, well, we make this now, and I was like, and I could go, well, that's not good. It's like, well, maybe it is good in some other situation with another amp, but for the sound I'm going for, it isn't quite as good. So it's a little bit more of a chore to get it. But I think, yeah, just some of the sounds. That was the main thing that I and I think just. The not thinking about playing when you're playing, do as much thinking and practicing as you can when you're practicing, but when you start playing, don't bring that into the arena. Don't think about it as much, And so that was, I think that I've learned a little bit more about music, and interestingly now that's good. It's helped me in my writing, but it also makes me more aware of myself when I'm just playing. So there's two sides to everything, You kind of have to check and balance what works and what doesn't. But I think in the past it was a little easier to get a certain sound that I wanted, and then I think I didn't have a clue what I was doing. So there was a certain reckless abandon to it, And now I know, oh, well, that's what you're doing now. So then there's a little bit more of a conservatism to it, So that's all, like trying to bust down the walls and just stay liquid, just stay open-minded, stay, I think you have to stay childlike about music, because if, and I think this will be true probably when I leave this planet, but when I think about what are my favorite times in music, I don't think about necessarily the big gig or the contracts or the success. I think about the times when I first plugged into an amp and I went, God, that's, being 15 years old and just going, God, this is fun, or being in a van and drive it all night to go play some gig for $30, because it's the simple, just that passion of just playing, and that's the highest moments you remember. And it's like when I meet people on the road and they, well, I don't play for a living, or I'm not doing that good in my band. I said, man, that stuff doesn't matter, because if, okay, so maybe it doesn't, and someday you're going to get this huge deal, and you're going to have this, it's not going to give you anything that you don't have now,
Right.
Because it's like, you might not have that, but you plug in that amp and you play, you go, God, this is elative, I love it, and that's what it's all about. And the more I stay in touch with that, I think the better music I can make, So that's to me, it's like going back and making sure you keep those jewels, and then see where, and then stay open-minded and see where it can take you somewhere fresh.
If I said to you, Eric, what is your favorite guitar solo that you played on a record? What is it?
Wow, I don't. What would that be? I don't even know. What would it be?
What is your favorite guitar sound? How's that? On a particular song.
I like the sound on Trademark, the ending solo to Trademark.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember when we were mixing that, the engineer was like, you can't do that. It's too big. It's over there. It's like, yeah, but I want it like a big cello riding over. And they had EQ'd it where it was real thin. I was like, no. And so Richard Mullen, the guy I'd worked with for all these years, he came in and re-EQ'd it the way I wanted. And the guy that was working on the radio, he's like, I don't know, but it worked, But I like that sound, yeah.
When you go into the control room to listen, how involved are you on mixing, on your guitar sound, all those things?
Pretty involved.
Very involved,
yeah.
Right?
Because I have to kind of produce my guitar thing,
Would you say you spend as much time here getting your sound in the room as you do in the control room also?
I'm always messing with my sound, trying to get it to work better for me. But when I'm in the studio, I don't spend as much time on my guitar sound, only because I know what amps work, I know where the mic works, and I know how to EQ it in the control room. It's become out of a process of when I used to spend a crazy amount of time. I learned kind of what works for me.
Okay, so what does work? Well, how do you mic a guitar? What do you typically use on your guitar amp?
Well, what usually works for me is I'll use, like, well, it depends. If I'm doing a clean tone, I'll probably use like some really nice condenser mics that are like half on the cone and half on the dust cover.
Yep.
I'll run them through a couple of APIs usually, and I'll usually try to take a little 2.8 or 3K out, because Fender amps always have this peakiness. If you try to dial it out of the amp, you lose the energy of the amp.
That's right.
But if you go in the studio, you can kind of just like
notch
surgically
it
a little bit more.
Yeah.
And then I might replace it with an 8 or 9 or 10K just to give it a little sheen on the top, or make up for whatever wiring lost end I have from. And then I'll run it through like a compressor, a little bit, just to compress it a little bit. Sometimes I'll add 100 cycles if it's on the bridge pickup and it's a little thin. And then I put it in stereo. And usually don't use the stereo of the reverb on the amp. I'll use 2 amps that way, and then I'll use like a stereo reverb. For the Marshall, I'll use like an old 57.
Okay.
Kind of like in the bottom right quadrant of the speaker, about maybe 4 or 5 inches out, at a little bit of an angle. And then I'll use like a room mic, like a Neumann or something. And,
just to give it some air.
Yeah, and then I'll run that through. I'll run it through like a Neve, and then sometimes a room mic through an API. But also, this when I recorded off View Musicom, we used a Ramsa channel, which is this old funk ball thing made by Panasonic, but they sound great on a distortion guitar.
Yeah.
And I get kidded about that all the time, ridiculed, like, why are you using that thing? I said, well, it works, That there's the EQ on it's kind of like the tone circuit on a Marshall or something, and you can actually turn some of the EQ up, and it gives you even more gain. So I mean, all the lead guitar on Avi Musicom was cut on a Ramsa, which. I'm gonna go buy those up real quick.
Yeah, after this comes out, you can't.
It's interesting, sometimes the funky stuff. It's just like with guitar pedals, and the same thing in the studio. Sometimes the funkier stuff really gives you a better sound.